Manner of articulation. Based on how air flows through the vocal tract, consonants can be broadly divided into obstruents and sonorants. Obstruents are consonants produced with an obstruction of the airflow, and sonorants with little obstruction of the airflow. Obstruents. Most consonants are obstruents. With obstruents, there is turbulence in the airflow as the airflow is obstructed or restricted in some manner. Depending on the manner of restricting the airflow, obstruents can be further divided into three types: plosives or stops, fricatives, and affricates. Most obstruents occur as voiced and voiceless pairs, with two sounds being produced identically from a mechanical standpoint. That is, they occur in the same place and in the same manner. Their only difference is the use or non-use of the vocal cords. Plosives, stops. Plosives, or stops, are sounds that are made by popping the air, like popping a balloon. When popping, we exhale breath, and this process is called aspiration. To make the pop, we first need to stop the airstream entirely. This explains why plosives are also called stops. And then we release the air all at once. There are 7 plosive sounds, which are pa, ba, ta, da, ka, ga, and the glottal stop. The glottal stop is not a phoneme of English, but it is used for a special case as an allophone of ta, which we learn in the section on ta. Plosives are all produced by the same method: stop the air and then pop the air. They differ in where the stop happens. For the pa, ba pair, the stop happens at the lips. For the ta, da pair, the stop happens at the tooth ridge, which is also called the alveolar ridge. For the ka, ga pair, the stop happens at the velum. And for glottal stop, the stop happens at the glottis. For this glottal stop, the space between the vocal cords is closed completely, very briefly, then released. We can find the glottal stop when we say the expression uh-oh. With the pairs, pa, ta, ka are voiceless, and ba, da, ga are voiced. Sounds are called voiced when the vocal cord vibrates while the sounds are produced. Fricatives. Fricatives are sounds that are made by friction. It is like air escaping from a hole in a balloon. For fricative consonants, 2 parts of the vocal tract, such as the tongue and the teeth, come very close to each other, making a very small narrow opening for air to escape. Air hisses through the small space in between. So the final sound is a friction-like hissing sound. The airstream is never completely blocked, so the sound can continue. There are 9 fricatives, which are fa, va, tha, tha, sa, za, sha, ja, and ha. For fa and its voiced counterpart va, air escapes through the space between the top teeth and the lower lip. For tha and its voiced counterpart tha, air escapes through the space between the top teeth and the tongue. For sa and its voiced counterpart za, the tip of the tongue is close to the alveolar ridge, making a narrow space between the tip of the tongue and the bottom of the teeth. Air escapes through that space. For sha and its voiced counterpart ja, the sides of the tongue touch the sides of the upper teeth. The tip of the tongue does not touch anything. The blade of the tongue is concave, making the tongue look like a rain gutter. The lips are close together and protrude. Air comes out through the channel created by the concave part of the tongue. Sha is used in confusion, and ja is used in confusion. Ha is produced through friction in the vocal cords. Ha is unvoiced, as the vocal cords do not vibrate during the production of this sound. To create the ha sound, the deep back of the tongue slightly constricts within the throat. Affricates. Affricates are made by combining a stop with a fricative. The mouth is closed at first, as in a stop. Then it remains open a little bit into position for a fricative. So an affricate is a stop with a slow release. For instance, Try to say the word cheese. You should notice that your tongue is in the position to make a ta sound, but instead of releasing the air entirely quickly, you release it only partially and turn it into a fricative, thus resulting in the sound ch. Its voiced counterpart is j. Try to say the word geez. You begin with the stop d, and then release the air slowly to become a j. English has only two affricates, ch and j. Sonorants. The rest of the consonants are sonorants, which is a combination of sonor from sonorous and ants from consonant. Sonorants are consonants produced with a relatively open passage for the airflow. Since the air passage is open, there is no turbulence of air. Also, the sounds can be produced continuously. Sonorants are always voiced. These are sonorants: n, la, ra, w, and y. Sonorants can be divided into nasals and approximants depending on where the air escapes. With nasals, air escapes through the nose, and with approximants, through the mouth. The first three, un, ung, are called nasals. The rest, la, ra, wa, ya, are called approximants. This name comes from the fact that the sounds are produced by bringing one articulator in the vocal tract close to another without causing audible friction. Nasals. Un, ong are called nasals as the air comes through the nose. Nasals are produced with a lowered velum which allows air to escape freely through the nose. For the lips block the air. For the tongue at the alveolar ridge blocks the air, and for the back of the tongue blocks the air at the velum, forcing air to flow through the nasal passage. Liquids. La and ra are called liquids since airflow is redirected and sent to different directions before exiting the lips. For la, imagine the tongue being like a big rock in the middle of a little brook. The water stream is divided into two and moves around the rock. So is the airflow with la. For ra, imagine the tongue like an odd-shaped rock that is under the water surface. The water will move around and over the rock. So is the airflow with ra around the tongue. Liquids are some of the hardest sounds to pronounce correctly for non-native speakers. One important reason for this is that liquids are actually pronounced differently before and after a vowel in a syllable, but non-native speakers are often unaware of this fact. For la, the two different sounds are often called the light L and dark L. For ra, the two different sounds are called the prevocalic R and vocalic R. We examine these different sounds of the same phoneme briefly. Lateral liquids. La is the lateral liquid since the flow of air is redirected around the tongue and toward the sides of the mouth before exiting through the lips. That is, air flows around the sides of the tongue. For this to happen, the tip of the tongue touches the alveolar ridge and the sides of the tongue are dropped down so that the air can flow around the sides of the tongue. The opening left beside the tongue is wide enough that air flowing through does not become turbulent. English has one lateral liquid phoneme, la, but it actually has two different sounds. The alveolar lateral approximant, la, also called the light L, and the velarized alveolar lateral approximant, la, also called the dark L. For the light L, the tongue is brought near the alveolar ridge, forcing the air around the tongue toward the sides, lateral, of the mouth before being allowed to exit. The light L occurs in a syllable initial position. For example, like, lion, light. For the dark L, in addition to the tip of the tongue being brought near the alveolar ridge, the back of the tongue is raised toward the velum. That is, there is an additional arching of the tongue in the velar region. The dark L occurs in a syllable final position, like pool, world, or milk. When L is pronounced as a dark L, it becomes syllabic, acting as the sound carrier in a syllable. In other words, the dark L has a vowel sound, schwa, embedded in it. Retroflex liquids. Ra is formed with the tip of the tongue curled back toward the roof of the mouth without touching any part of the mouth. The back of the tongue stays low. Since the tip of the tongue has to be curled back, Ra is often called the retroflex liquid. Due to the tongue shape, the flow of air out of the body is altered. The Ra sound can also be made by raising the back of the tongue. The center of the back of the tongue is lower and the air travels through this groove to create the sound. This way of making the R sound is called the retracted R. American English is rhotic. Rhotic means the pronunciation of the syllable final R. Since British English is non-rhotic, the syllable final R is dropped. R that comes before a vowel in a syllable, or a syllable initial R, is called prevocalic R, and R that comes after a vowel in a syllable, or a syllable final R, is called vocalic R. The prevocalic R and vocalic R have different sound quality. Just like the situation with the light L and the dark L, the prevocalic R is a pure consonant sound, but the vocalic R has a vowel sound, schwa, embedded in it. The vocalic R is the cause of the R-colored vowel, which we examined in the chapter on vowels. Due to the R dropping of the British English has only prevocalic R. Glides. W and y are called glides because the air glides over the tongue before exiting the lips. Glides are also called semivowels. To pronounce the W sound, form your lips in a small, tight circle and let the air out as if you were blowing out a candle. The W sound can be found in words such as woman and win. The Y sound can be found in words such as yesterday and canyon. Y is made by placing the tip of the tongue just behind the lower front teeth and raising the middle of the tongue towards the roof of the mouth. The sides of the tongue come in contact with the top of the mouth, but the middle of the tongue does not touch the roof, creating a passageway for air from the lungs through the mouth. In this section, we classified consonants based on how they are produced. When we learn individual consonant phonemes, we will learn how they are produced in detail.